self-awareness is a huge piece of it, I think, because if you're not aware of who you are and why you tick the way you tick, then you're probably going to say, well, all these external things will fix it. If I just go make X amount, or if I get this, or if I get that, or if I get this award.
You realize that these things that you wanted don't fully do it, so then you do the internal work after. I think you can either do the internal work and then manifest external results as a byproduct, or you can shoot for external results and then realize it's not the answer and then do the internal work once you are unfulfilled at the finish line.
Next Level Nation, welcome back to another episode of Next Level University, where we help you level up your life, your love, your health, and your wealth. We hope you enjoyed yesterday's episode number 1645, One Reason We Feel Stuck Sometimes. Today, for episode number 1646, Insecurities Trap Us Like This. Alan and I were in person today. We spent from 9 a.m. until 7 p.m. together. We're working on event stuff, making sure everything's good to go. Guidebooks came.
Yeah,
not
guidebooks. They came. They're looking good.
Yes, they are.
Shout out to Amy. Strong work, Amy.
Shout out to Amy. And as we get progressively tired or more tired, we start to have deeper conversations, usually, you and I.
Oh, yeah.
And the last thing we were talking about before I left was the fact that we know a lot of people who are really, really, from the outside looking in, you would assume this person is the most confident human. We were using one specific example, not from a place of judgment, just from a place of example. And this person is a high-level fitness competitor. This person is unbelievably beautiful, a former professional cheerleader for the NFL, one of the NFL teams, just a gorgeous human being. And one of the most in shape people you'll ever see, just beautiful. But you never know behind the scenes that this person is super insecure about their past and about the way they look. And what I told Alan, I said, I think we should do an episode on this because insecurities trap us into thinking that we have to overcome them externally, when I think in reality, we have to overcome them internally.
Well, you were talking about your experience when you were doing fitness shows as well. My deep belief was if I got in good enough shape, I'd feel good about myself. And I'm not somebody who, I don't really have any issues body-wise. I don't have body issues. So for me, it wasn't if I get in really good shape, I'll love my body. That wasn't it. It was if I get in really good shape, I'll be confident. I'll actually have real confidence for the first time in my life. That didn't work at all. That didn't work. When I was in the best shape I've ever been, I felt the worst internally. I had the worst mental health. I had the worst anxiety. I'd say I had the worst depression at the time. Same.
But it's
not
very...
the depression part, but I was not confident when I was at my...
Yeah, right.
When I was at my peak fitness, I was on the struggle bus internally. It was more fear would get to me, and it was scarcity. Scarcity is the best way to describe it when you're starving yourself, essentially.
It's very alluring when you think, well, if I get these external results, I'll feel better internally. But that's not really where the insecurity tends to come from anyway. Usually it's internal. So the allure is, okay, these are the things I'm insecure about. For me, I'm insecure about my height. I'm 5'4", 5'5" on a good day, I guess. That's probably one of the reasons I worked as hard as I did to get in really good shape, but that didn't fix it. You and I were talking about it today. We were talking about how in high school you were short and it was a struggle. And I said, yeah, trust me, I understand. And I said, it's just one of those things where you have to go inward and say, well, this is the way it is. There's very little I can do about this from a behavior standpoint. But if I'm just thinking of a perspective, I'm just going to be inside my head, I have to understand that this is what I'm going to have to deal with. No amount of external success, no amount of money, no amount of possessions, nothing is going to change that. It's not going to make it any better, quote unquote. Go ahead.
What has changed it? Like if you could articulate so you used to not be confident even though you were in unbelievably good shape. You were short, struggled with that. That didn't, external results, car, girlfriend, job, six figures. Yeah. None of that changed that. What ultimately did change it?
I would say admitting the fact that the insecurity, I think was trying to mask the insecurity with achievement.
I don't know if I ever really sat down and said, like, what are the top 3 things you're insecure about? And how are they showing up in your life? If I did, it probably would have been, I'm short. That would have been one. At other points in my life, it would have been, I don't have any education. I don't have any higher education. That would have been another one. And then probably I'm not smart. That probably would have been like the third. Those would have been the big 3. If I have nice things, you're going to assume I'm successful. If I'm in really good shape, yeah, you might be able to say I'm short, but I might be able to say I'm in better shape than you. So what's your excuse? I might say that from an ego place. Those were really the big pieces that I didn't understand at the time. And it was admitting the fact that the root cause of it was not feeling good enough. All those things really fall under not good enough. So first it was admitting what the root cause is, and then it's just, I don't know, not villainizing my insecurity, not blaming my insecurity, not running away from my insecurity, just trying to be very honest and very straightforward with the fact that this is something I'm insecure about. And if I don't admit it to myself, I'm never going to be able to overcome it. And nothing I've done externally has changed the way I feel about myself internally. So at some point, I should probably start working on the root cause and get familiar with me.
What I've come to understand, having coached so many people, I don't think there's anyone I can think of that doesn't have insecurity. We all have a different amount of it, and we all have insecurities about different things. So, I was tall and lanky growing up, so I get insecure when I'm not feeling big and strong. Kev is shorter, so he probably likes to be leaner.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So that, because when you're shorter, if you're not lean, you look like a meatball.
Yes, sometimes I look like a meatball. No, sometimes I look like a meatball.
Kevin's words, not mine. There have been times in the past, I want to make it clear here that I'm not making fun of Kev. Kev has called himself that, and he has so much muscle mass that when he gains weight, he sometimes...
I look like a bloated tick at times is also what I've said, a bloated
That's
tick.
what he's said. So again,
Yes.
His words, not mine. I didn't want to offend anyone with that. And I want to make that clear because you gotta dance delicately around insecurities because everyone has them, and I don't want to trigger anybody in a negative way. Okay, so that said, everyone has insecurities. If you took 100 people and you went to the beach, how many of them are actually not going to be insecure in a bathing suit?
It's a great question. I don't know. I would assume the majority of people probably would be, depending on what they've been doing. Because that's the hard thing is, well, if you're insecure about let's say you're insecure about your body, and you say, you know what, I'm just so sick of hiding this. I know I can do something about it. Maybe you going and doing the external stuff will help you feel better about your body, but you might realize that wasn't really the insecurity in the first place.
So what was?
I think it depends on the person. It probably is a not enoughness if that's what you're dealing with, or okay, let's do this. You are sick of not feeling confident on the beach. So you go and you get a personal trainer and you diet and you get into amazing shape. Then you go on the beach and you realize, oh my goodness, it was never really about me being in shape, quote unquote. It's the fact that when I was growing up, my parents always poked fun at me because I was pudgy or whatever, fat, out of shape, chunky, whatever, big bone, whatever your parents hypothetically said. It's not an external thing. It's an internal thing. That's where it started. It started with your relationship with being made fun of for something that you didn't feel like you could control. Now you have control over it, but I think you still have to heal that wound.
Yeah, it's almost like you have to, because like back when I was tall and lanky, I'll use myself as an example. I remember being 160 pounds, skinny fat, drank too much too often, wasn't in shape. I told the story on the podcast about seeing Superman on screen and then crying in the bathroom. And I remember being insecure around big, strong men. And it's almost like when I worked on that externally, it got better, but only because I also worked on myself internally.
Yeah.
It's like you have to do them both. It's like, I've been using this analogy a lot lately. I call it the two trains. And that I think that's why life can be so difficult, is because you have to be good at two things simultaneously, and they tend to be diametric opposites. Let me give you an example. You have to be really good at believing in yourself, but you also have to be just as good at being humble. You have to be really good at long-term strategic thinking, but you also have to be just as good at making sure you pay the bills in the short term. You have to be really good at being warm and loving and kind and charismatic with other people and empathetic and compassionate. But you also have to be really good at being hardcore disciplined when you have to get your shit done. I think life is hard because it's very hard to be ambidextrous. I'm so convinced of that. And to go back to the original kind of point here is you have to work on you have to put in the work in the gym to overcome your physique insecurities. At least I did. But you also have to realize that it can't just be external.
Yeah. Well,
you can't only work on it externally. You have to internally work on it at the same time. Because I've seen some people work on it only internal, and they are essentially, in some ways, lying to themselves as if they're healthy when they're not. I've seen that before. And then on the other side, I've seen people that are in world-class, extraordinary shape that are genuinely deeply, deeply insecure and don't even love themselves at all. And it really requires you being good at both simultaneously. I think that's why it's so hard, because you get really good at one and you aren't focused on the other. And I think that's what makes life really difficult, personally. I always feel like it's a pendulum that's always swinging.
I think that's where the unlock is. I think the unlock is usually on the other side. It's usually the thing that you haven't faced yet.
The thing you haven't mastered yet.
Yeah, you and I were talking before I left, and I said, hey, you want to see a picture of my dad? Because for some reason I saw it on Facebook today. And you and I were talking about that and what that was all about and what it was like to get that message in 2000, whenever, 16 or 17, whatever it was. And people used to make fun of me. Not seriously, but it probably hurt me more than they thought it did. And they used to make fun of me for not having a dad. There's several people I can think of that you and I went to school together. But I always laughed about it. I never got mad about it.
What would they say? That didn't happen with me because they know my father passed away.
Well, it's different.
I think it's a different thing.
I don't remember. It was always like people would make fun of my mom, the fact that my mom was my dad, for lack of better phrasing, and just I don't know. I don't really remember what the specifics were. Maybe I blocked it out. I don't know. But I know for a long time I was insecure about not knowing my dad.
I was insecure about it too.
Yeah.
For sure. But that doesn't mean, fortunately, I don't remember people actually making fun
There
of
were
that.
several people that did it. Just, it was more of like they thought it was a joke and I just went with it because I was already super insecure. I remember for some reason, one of the first days of school, you go around the room, and this was in like probably middle school, and you say, hey, I'm Kevin. My mom does this and my dad does this for a living. And I didn't know what my dad did because I had no idea. So I just made up that he was in construction because it seemed, and I found out later in life he was in construction. So I had a good guess. But
great guess.
I was super insecure about that. I went and got success. I was in the best shape ever. My girlfriend was a model. I had all those things, all those external things. One of the unlocks for me, like we talked about in a recent episode, I think last week or the week before, was meeting my dad. That had nothing to do with being external. That was all internal stuff. That's why I was so afraid to do it. I was terrified to do that because I had been so ego-driven and said, well, if I just accomplish all these things, he'll have to be proud of me, for lack of better phrasing. But that's not what it was about. For me, it was about meeting him and then realizing how much power I'd given him to control my life from a distance. And that was such an important unlock for me. But that was all internal. You and I are on, I don't know, what am I on? Hour 16 or hour 17 on the day right now. This is easier than going and seeing my dad.
Definitely.
This is I would do 7 days of this in a row before I went and did that again. That was super hard. But isn't that a sign that that's where my weakness lies? In the thing that I'm more afraid to do?
The thing that is a deeper insecurity.
Hello, 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 NLU listener. Thank you, as always, for listening to Next Level University. Real quick, I just want to jump in and let you know about the Next Level Dreamliner. This is a journal that I use every single day. Achieve your dreams 90 days at a time. It breaks down your dreams into goals, milestones, and daily habits. We hope you enjoy it. The link will be in the show notes.
What is insecurity? It's uncertainty. Where does that uncertainty stem from? It stems from a belief about you. So, and these things develop so young. It's so, not all of them. You can develop new insecurities. Like if you were to get, even I'll use the car accident. I got in a car accident when I was 26 and I developed new insecurities. I was insecure in cars for a while after that. It just, I had to rework on the internal. Yeah, I could be safer on the road, but it wasn't just that. I had to also work on being okay with double yellow lines again, and I got claustrophobic for a time. So again, it comes back to the internal and the external, and I do believe it's so interesting. I have some clients who want long-term strategic thinking, chess moves, business acumen, structure, org structure, and they laugh like, why am I always crying on these calls? Because we don't need to work on that. That's what you want. If you want PPT and tracking and habits and disciplines and the next long-term strategic breakthrough, you probably need internal work. I've found that all of us are righty or lefty. I can't name a person that I've coached that isn't either more developed internally or more developed externally. I'm thinking of someone right now, one of our listeners. She went to school with me. External development, professional development, super high, super high, but she hasn't done as much of the internal work, and that's very clear. And I wouldn't have known that unless I had. It wasn't until after I started doing a lot of therapy that I started realizing how you can tell when someone has. You can tell. It's obvious. I was watching something. Drew Barrymore has a new talk show, and I saw a clip. I think she was interviewing like Megan Fox or something like that, and she was saying some different things about internal work, and Drew Barrymore stopped her and said, "Oh, you've done a lot of therapy." You can tell because of the verbiage, the way they talk about their internal world. And so Emilia, she's more internal than external. Me, I'm more external than internal. Kev, I think you're pretty balanced. I would say if I had to guess, you're more internal than external.
Yeah, that's fair.
I would say that's most likely, especially compared to most men, statistically speaking. I think that that's what it is. It's personal development and professional development. It's internal work and external work. And every insecurity, I think, has both components. I think it has a internal wound. What does this mean about me? Identity work. And I think it has some manifestation in the external world. Like, okay, I was insecure about being tall and lanky. I was tall and lanky. So now that I'm not tall and lanky, am I still insecure? Not as much. Definitely not as much. But now I have this other thing to overcome of now I want to be bigger, so now I'm never lean. It's like harder for me to get lean because I don't like being smaller. And then, okay, now I'm big and strong. Now what? Why am I still kind of feeling this way? Like, why hasn't it fully fixed? Like, okay, maybe it's when I'm 205. Oh, now I'm 220. Oh, okay, 220.
Three bills.
Yeah, exactly. And eventually it's...
But that's probably not what it is. It's probably like you need to diet very hard and get to the place where you're comfortable with that, and then something internal will happen from there, maybe.
Exactly.
Maybe.
And that's the growth journey, is you shoot for a goal externally, and I think it forces you to face yourself internally. And you work on yourself internally and then manifest goals externally. I don't know which it's supposed to be, Kev. I know it's yin and yang. I know for you and I think statistically for men it tends to be this way. I think for us it was more, let's shoot for this external result and then get it, realize it's not the solution, and then work internally, and then lose the external result and or fall from some of it, and then, okay, now we have the internal growth, but it's like I still kind of want the external result. That's been our journey a lot, and I'll try to make that more clear for our listeners. We would shoot for these goals and dreams, right? And it would force us to look in the mirror, because when we would get them, it wouldn't fulfill us. This is prior to Kevin and I reconnecting with the Hyperconscious podcast. I think the Hyperconscious podcast and Next Level University has always been much more internal than external overall. But prior to that, it was mostly, let's chase this external. Okay, 6 figures. I wanted to make 6 figures right out of college. I did that, and then I was like, maybe it'll be 200,000. And you realize that these things that you wanted don't fully do it, so then you do the internal work after. I think you can either do the internal work and then manifest external results as a byproduct, or you can shoot for external results and then realize it's not the answer and then do the internal work once you are unfulfilled at the finish line.
Self-awareness is a huge piece of it, I think, because if you're not aware of who you are and why you tick the way you tick, then you're probably going to say, well, all these external things will fix it. If I just go make X amount, or if I get this, or if I get that, or if I get this award. You and I have known a lot of, I won't say a lot of people, but we've known people who are just so focused on going and getting another diploma or another certification or another diploma or another certification, this. I think one of the reasons is because they're probably insecure about something deep down, and they think they need those things to prove that they know what they know. Not everybody. But I know I've coached people like that before, where it's every time they get a new certification, they go get another one, but they never use the one they just got.
I've thought about this a little bit. You not having academic accolades, I have a new frame on that than what I used to. My new frame on that is it actually is a little bit, I don't want to lessen it. It's impressive to me because the way, so for example, you show up in a hoodie and a beanie and you don't have like a master's degree and you still value yourself. There's something really powerful about that I never used to value. And it's not like it's not like I was purposely not valuing that. I wasn't conscious of how powerful that is, because if I was in a hoodie and a beanie and had no higher education, would I still have the same strut in my step? You know what I mean? And that's one of those things that I've never really looked at it from that frame before, but I've started to, because I like to be professional. I like to be dressed nicely. Is that because I'm insecure when I'm not, or is it because I actually like it? I don't know. I think it's probably a little bit of both. But for you, that's definitely been something that's been fascinating for me to witness, because you're okay with showing up to a coaching call in a hoodie and a beanie, and dude,
for sure.
Good for you, man. Honestly, I'm not making that wrong.
No, I don't think you are. I don't think, and I appreciate the clarification. But when you don't have that card to pull from, you learn how to use other cards. I was thinking on the way home, so it's like an hour and 15 minutes from Alan's house to my house, and I was thinking of how I don't remember what job I had. I don't know if it was the gas station. I think I was probably working at the gas station, or maybe shortly after. I don't know. But I applied at like 3 warehouses and I got turned down by every job. I remember I applied to be a security guard and I was like, this is going to be simple. Like, I'm definitely going to get this job. I have martial arts background. This is going to be fine. No, I didn't even get a call back. I remember just getting ghosted all the time when I went to apply for jobs. So it was never, I'm never going to have accolades that are going to get me ahead. It's never going to be, okay, it's this guy versus this guy. Oh, he has a shinier resume. That was never going to be me.
So then what was the
personality
competitive advantage? Yeah.
But I didn't know that when I was 18 or 19 or 20. I didn't know that. I think I started to learn that later in life because people would say, oh, you have a really great personality. You're going to fit in great here. I started to get that more and more. And that just became, well, okay, I'm the one who put myself in this position. I decided not to go to college.
You know what it is too? And this is me realizing this in my 30s. I never understood this before. It's emotional intelligence. I have come to understand that some of the people that have the most accolades are the least emotionally intelligent.
Yeah, that's fair.
Even with the team at NLU, we don't hire for accolades and skills. And hire is the wrong word. We don't bring people onto the team. I don't like to use the word employee. I like team member. Team members at NLU, the last thing I'm concerned about is whether or not they can. We don't even look at resumes.
No, I wouldn't even know what to look for.
We look for, you know what we do?
For?
I have Christina and Kev and myself, and I ask them questions like, hey, what do you think of this person? Do you think they'd be a good fit here? Do you think they would fall in love with NLU? How do you feel intuitively? I'll ask questions like that. Intuitively, do you feel like it's a good culture fit? And so the interesting thing that I don't think anyone maybe consciously knows, particularly in the corporate sort of white collar workforce, particularly when you and I were younger, is the emotional intelligence piece. That's coming up now. Emotional intelligence in the 21st century is becoming the most important skill. And as long as you can work hard and you can get along well with others and you're emotionally mature, you'll fit in well at NLU, most likely. I'd rather have that than computer skills. I mean, some of the people that have the best resumes, I'm going to just call a spade, are the hardest to work with.
Yeah.
They're kind of a pain in the butt. They get entitled easily. Not always. Again, I'm not trying to make generalizations. Some people are not, but I would say statistically speaking. So it's almost like that's one of the reasons you always got hired, is because people knew, okay, he's going to work well with others. He's going to work hard. He's going to show up on time. He's got a chip on his shoulder, so he's got something to prove. Let's rock and roll. Let's set this dude up. Let's unleash this dude, you know.
Well, that wasn't until later, though. That was like mid-20s when that happened. That wasn't until later for me. When I left I was at the materials job where I would deliver building supply materials. And I was a forklift operator and I was a truck driver. And when I left that job, because my uncle worked there, that's why I had an in. I had an in to work there. When I left that job and I was going to the fire academy, I had nothing. I had no idea what I was going to do. One of the guys I was going to the fire academy with, Big Zach, tattooed metalhead, nicest guy ever of all time, would run through a brick wall. He's the nicest guy, like genuinely. But he's like, hey, do you have a job? And I said, no. And he said, do you know anything about construction? And I said, kind of, but I'll learn. He said, yeah, cool. You can come work with us. So that was just because he liked me. And then the next job was the job I got that kind of changed my life, for lack of better phrasing. But that was because you have a great personality and we think you'll be a fit here. I think that's just something that developed. And here's the last thing I'll say before we go. This will be my next level nugget. There's a piece of me now that loves when I go on podcasts as a guest, because I don't think people have that high of expectations for me. So I don't want to say it's easy for me to over deliver, but there's a little piece of me that loves when someone, I don't know, maybe somebody does research, or maybe they don't do research and they see me show up and I'm not dressed as nicely as you, and maybe they know I didn't go to college or whatever. There's a little piece of me that likes that, because it's like, all right, cool, I can do what I do. I've been working on this piece for a long, long, long time. Now I can kind of show that off and hopefully do a great job of that versus having something else to fall back on. So my next level nugget would be, sometimes your insecurities can facilitate you creating superpowers, for lack of better phrasing. I'm not saying it's a superpower, but I do think I'm pretty good at being on other podcasts. You might not be able to tell right now because I'm running on very low sleep, but your insecurities can create superpowers on the other end.
Yeah, Kev, I can attest to that. Speaking with you and just being on other shows and stuff. Okay, I have episodes where I do this with you. You and I pitch and catch. It's like we're playing doubles tennis. I can pass the ball to him and he'll spike it. When I'm on other podcasts, I've done 3 people podcasts. I've done 4 people podcasts with and without you. I've done one-on-one podcasts. It's not the same, Kev.
Well, we've done it.
Other people aren't on your level.
Well, we've just done it so much.
Yeah, but it's also you can hang in a conversation in a different way. Whereas a lot of new podcasters, this is nothing against them because we did the same thing in the beginning, which is they have to like revert to that next question.
Yeah.
Like, you know how they'll, oh yeah, and then they'll immediately just revert and start reading again. You don't have to do that. And so that is a skill. It's great. And it's just awesome that you've been able to overcome the whole I didn't go to college, I was the gas station guy type of thing, because that's really something, man.
I appreciate it.
That's really something. Absolutely, brother.
I appreciate
it. I have when I go on a show, I think the expectations are
they expect you
high.
to be something special, so you can't
it's
miss.
It's hard to over deliver.
You can't miss.
But I still pull it off sometimes. So
if you have not yet got your ticket to Next Level Live, we are 4 days out. If you're listening to this on Tuesday, we have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So if you haven't got your tickets, please do, whether it's virtual or in person. At least reach out if you're interested, because we can let you know whether or not we have tickets left. But I would say give it a shot. You never know. You never know. Just excited. Excited for another live event. Super overwhelmed for sure, but the team is flying in. We have a WhatsApp group, NLU Travel, and people are asking questions about the Airbnb. So it's starting to feel real. Even though we've been talking about it for months, it is starting to feel very real. So we are excited to have you, whether in person or virtual. Link will be in the show notes, as always.
if you're in person, we got stuffed chicken coming. Right?
Yeah, I don't know what
Stuffed
else.
chicken,
I don't
and then
remember.
There's a vegetarian option.
I don't remember what else. I don't remember what we chose. We chose it months
This
ago.
is the venue that Kevin and I very first spoke at together. Obviously we've given speeches prior to that. I don't know if you have. Was that your very first speech?
That was
ever?
my very first speech ever.
My goodness. So that was the first time him and I had spoken together, co-hosted an event together, and the food was bomb.
Yeah, the
I
food
do
was very
remember that. The food was excellent, so I'm excited. If you haven't got your tickets, please do DM myself or Kevin. And if you do not follow us on social media, Instagram, Facebook, we're going to be doing a lot more LinkedIn as well in the future. And we just want to stay connected with our listeners. So please reach out. Just say, hey, I loved episode whatever. We want to connect with our listeners way more and way better in the rest of 2024. We've kind of dropped the ball a little bit on that in the past, and we want to do a much better job because obviously we got overwhelmed, but it's really important to us. So if these episodes are affecting you, impacting you, helping you, please reach out and just let us know because it means the world to us. It really does.
Strong work. Tomorrow, for episode number 1647, working through shame. I don't have a story off the top of my head. I'll come up with something. But I feel like we haven't talked about shame in a minute. And yeah, I would definitely say you and I, me particularly, since I tend to come up with the episodes, I love the inner stuff. That's a really good example of if you had a podcast, would you talk all about inner stuff or would you talk all about external success? That's probably maybe your insecurity lies in the other one. But that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow, a little bit about shame. As always, we love you. We appreciate you. Grateful for each and every one of you. And at NLU, we do not have fans. We have family. We will talk to you all tomorrow.
Continue growing through those insecurities. Next Level Nation.